While Russian troops in Ukraine pay with thousands of lives for every kilometer captured, while civilians perish and cities are reduced to rubble, Putin is waging another war. This is a secret war, one that Putin fights for the minds of people worldwide, particularly in Europe. Now, Ukraine's main ally. This war is not fought with soldiers, but through prominent cultural figures, successful athletes, and slick politicians. This war is also fueled by money, but instead of being turned into shells and missiles, that money is funneled into cultural and sporting events. The map of this war is not the fields of Ukraine, but the political and cultural landscape of distant countries. Victories in this war are measured not by territories and cities seized by the aggressor, but by the change in political regime and the rise of pro-Kremlin governments. This Monday, a concert by the world-renowned conductor Valery Gergiev was cancelled in Italy. It seems like cultural news. In reality, it's a story about how, in his secret war for the minds and hearts of Europeans, Putin deployed his most loyal and elite forces to normalize support for the war and dictatorship, paving the way for his agents of influence to undermine political support for Ukraine. Thanks to the fierce campaign we conducted with our allies, this attack was repelled and the performance was cancelled. But this is just one battle in the war we wanted to tell you about. We will show how Putin uses soft power to infiltrate his agents of influence. We will dig deeper and examine not only the tools Putin employs, but also where they come from. These tools are often collectively referred to as soft power. This is a state's ability to influence other countries and their populations through the appeal of its culture, values, ideology, and way of life. It's a soft way of achieving goals based on persuasion and building a positive image. Imagine you are a dictator who daily and publicly kills thousands of people, including civilians, in a war you unleashed. You are literally wanted by the International Criminal Court. You are extremely toxic, and no one wants to deal with you, your oligarch friends or your officials. This means you have no allies, no agents of influence, and your battlefield opponents find it much easier to gain support. But you want to change this. To do so, you need to find things that others perceive as inherently positive and associate them with your name and your policies. This won't immediately whitewash your tarnished reputation, but it will allow you to build informal communication channels, embed agents of influence, and create a platform where you can be heard, even if indirectly, through your trusted proxies. The cultural sphere is perfect for this, especially classical music. After all, it's something far removed from war and bloodshed, something sublime. Importantly, classical music opens doors to the upper echelons of society, and talk of the need for cultural dialogue sounds splendid. This brings us back to the example of the renowned Russian conductor Valery Gergiev, whose concert was cancelled on 21st July, a week before the scheduled performance. He is indeed an artist of global stature. But for Putin, it's not just Valery Gergiev's fame as an artist that matters, but also the fact that he has supported Putin for many years. He has performed in support of military campaigns launched by Russian authorities and the annexation of other countries' territories. He has repeatedly and publicly backed Putin in rigged elections in 2012.
Надо уметь держать себя президенту, чтобы со страной считались. Не знаю, боялись ли, уважали ли, считались.
2018 and even in 2024, after the war began. Indeed, in the summer of 2025, Gergiev performed on the stage of Russia's main theater in open support of Putin's aggression in Ukraine, transmitting Kremlin narratives. However, his unwavering loyalty came with a cost. Gergiev became too closely associated with Putin. After refusing to condemn the invasion of Ukraine in 2022, major global venues severed ties with him. This made it harder for him to play the role of Putin's trusted representative abroad. And so, in 2025, Putin decided it was time to deploy his most trusted and powerful soft power tool. Concerts by Gergiev were announced in Italy and later in Spain. The calculation was simple. If Gergiev returns to Europe, Putin gets a public face to show it's possible to support him and not be ostracized. For Putin, this is critically important. Putin remains too toxic for anyone to openly side with him in the war. But if Gergiev returns to European stages, it signals that being pro-Putin no longer results in isolation or marginalization. From there, it's a short step to supporting Putin's war openly. Through a loyal supporter like Gergiev touring Europe, Putin would also gain an informal envoy to engage with European elites, politicians, wealthy individuals, and cultural figures. Much has been said about Gergiev, but he's just one example, currently in the spotlight due to his fame and the cancellation of his performances following the broad public campaign. This showed that the supporting Putin remains toxic, but it also shows that Putin's regime continues his relentless efforts to reintegrate his agents of influence into European stages. Autumn 2024, another of Putin's trusted proxies, Ildar Abdrazakov, attempted to return to European stage. When I say trusted proxy, it's not a figure of speech. It's a term from Russian election law, referring to an official and highly trusted campaigner for a candidate. Abdrazakov's performances were cancelled after it was revealed that he was in our list of corrupt individuals and warmongers. In May 2025, the Russian Turetsky Choir Ensemble, which publicly supports Putin and the war, toured Europe with performances dedicated to the victory over Germany in World War II. This is yet another front where Putin wages war through soft power. He seeks to tie his name to the victory of long-defunct USSR over Nazism. His propaganda has already succeeded in this within Russia. Now he wants the world to draw a direct parallel between the USSR's war against fascism and the Russia's war against Ukraine. But back to culture and the Turetsky Choir performances. They were mostly confined to Russians' embassies and affiliated venues. However, as soon as they performed on a public square in Vienna, Russian propaganda seized the opportunity. But Gergiev, Abdrazakov, and the Turetsky Choir are just three names from a very long list of Russian cultural figures, including highly prominent ones like saxophonist Igor Butman, cellist Sergei Raldugin, and many others who publicly support Vladimir Putin. Now, we come to the core of Putin's propaganda in the sphere of culture and art. Can we say that Russian culture has produced many Putin supporters? If so, why is great Russian culture, which gave the world outstanding composers, musicians, and writers, on Putin's side? Does this mean that nearly 148 million Russians are behind him, and should Europe resist their unanimous support? If these questions seem valid to you, then the Putin has already made significant inroad in your fight for your mind. Even if his propaganda hasn't yet fed you the right answers, the very fact that you are asking these questions shows that the soft power has secured a foothold in your consciousness. But let me try to answer each of these questions. I'll show you how Putin's propaganda wants to lead you to certain conclusions and how makes you overlook other answers. First, why has Russian culture produced so many Putin supporters? This question already contains a sleight of hand. It's not about Russian culture, but about the state's cultural policy. It's the way officials distribute budget funds, not some inherent quality of Russian culture that explains why so many in the arts and especially in the classical scene support Vladimir Putin. Since Soviet time, nearly all cultural institutions in Russia have been almost entirely state-funded. In the USSR, the propaganda role of culture was openly acknowledged. Propaganda must be accessible to audience, so art must be affordable with all costs covered by the state, which never hesitated to interfere openly in cultural policy. Since ticket prices are low and inherently unprofitable, no large-scale, commercially successful projects in this sphere is possible. Add to this that since Soviet times, most concert venues are owned or controlled by the state. Thus, the state holds classical art, music, and culture at large in an iron grip. Opposing the state means being banned from your profession. Loyalty to the regime, though not sufficient on its own, is a prerequisite for career advancement in culture. And loyalty, or at least staying silent on sensitive social issues, is always rewarded. If an artist has talent, loyalty offers a clear path upward. Decades of this dynamic have led to a situation where prominent artists either support the regime or stay silent. This also answers the second question. Why is great Russian culture on Putin's side? Putin's propaganda strives to equate individual artists who support him with all of Russian culture. Their opinions are highlighted and amplified. They are given platforms and opportunities to make pro-regime statements. Meanwhile, the state's full might silences dissenters. This creates the impression that all artists support Putin. It's a standard propaganda trick. You think everyone supports Putin because you don't hear those who don't. They are denied access not only to media, but also to concert venues where they could showcase their talent. The third question is whether the support of many cultural figures means all of Russia backs Putin. Before answering, let's clarify. It's not about many cultural figures, but about those you are deliberately allowed to hear because they support their Kremlin patrons. Meanwhile, the few who dare speak out against the regime are repressed, sometimes literally killed, like the talented pianist Pavel Kushner. He too was part of Russian culture, but you won't hear his voice because he died in prison refusing to abandon his beliefs. Most others, seeing this, simply remain silent, fearing a ban on the profession they've dedicated their lives to. So the truth isn't in widespread support for Putin among cultural figures, but in the fact that propaganda amplifies the voices of a loyal minority, giving them the disproportionate weight. That's why those willing to serve as Putin's soft power tools are so important to him. They are ready to pose as the entirety of Russian culture and speak on its behalf. For Putin, they became both propaganda tools and agents of influence, and if loyal enough, in voice for delicate negotiations like Gergiev. If you think the arts are unique in this, they are not. The same scheme operates in sports. Athletes know that if they are not just successful, but also loyal to the regime, they'll be rewarded with high-ranking positions after their careers end. For Putin, sports is just another front to advance his interests. Loyalists pampered by the state fight on his side. A prime example is athlete Yelena Simbayeva, a Kremlin agent of influence in the International Olympic Committee. Sports and major events like the 2014 Sochi Olympics or the 2018 World Cup are used by Putin to whitewash his reputation, much like 20th century dictators, starting with the prominent 1936 Olympics in Nazi Germany. It's no coincidence that the narrative "art is above politics" sounds so similar to "sports is above politics." Sports and art are just two fronts in the secret war Putin wages for the minds of Europeans, two tools of soft power in the broader sense of culture, alongside support for pro-Kremlin politicians, economic ties, and more. Where Putin succeeds, his oligarch friends sponsoring athletes and officials funding artists will follow. Together, they'll pretend to represent all of Russia, its culture, or its people. Putin's money, once it ceases to be toxic, will corrupt European politicians, buy media, and influence opinion leaders. In unison, they'll claim Russia was forced to start the war, that Putin was within his rights, and that his actions are justified. They'll say Putin and Russia are one and the same, and opposing them is futile. The moment you believe them, you've lost, surrendering the fight. That's what they're aiming for. Don't let Kremlin agents of influence and Putin's propaganda deceive you. Follow our social media. We know all the masks and propaganda tricks of Putin's regime. and we expose their lies and agents of influence. Subscribe to our channel, where we speak the truth.